Here we are back with Chuck Graves, spending a little more time with Yamaha. Thank you very much. Got a big announcement.
Well, that's something I want to talk about and get out to all the racers and track day guys and enthusiasts and pro-level teams. Is we're going to change something on our website to help support the racers that use the brands and types of motorcycles and parts that we support through Graves and Yamaha. So we're going to add a feature to our website, and it's called the Works section of our site. And in that site, okay, that you can find at gravesport.com, there's going to be specialty parts for racing motorcycles and track day motorcycles that wouldn't be normally available through typical sales channels. They won't come with some of the support that you would have through a normal sales channel, which would mean like a set of instructions or something to that effect, but they will fill a gap between factory level machines and privateer level machines by us bringing those out to the general consumer.
Go on and tell me the things you need. I need a run to just watch me again. Falling to load my emotion. I fine-tune my machine till never end.
So let me talk about, what those parts are and what this site would entail, what this section of the Graves Motorsports or gravesport.com site will have.
Cool.
Over here we have a few select parts. For instance, a rider may want, a standard pull throttle tube, or he might want a tube with a larger diameter for a shorter throw. Those are normally available through different sites. But we make some that also have cams in the throttle that allow the rider to have a smoother off-to-on opening in the throttle, and then but still have only the same amount of throw, still can have a short throw. And that's those different types of pieces we make for our race bikes, but we don't sell them to the general public. But we do hand them out to riders that ask us about them and would like them. We'll sell them to them, but what we want to do is get it out to everybody so they could have them.
Now these parts you got on the bench, what are they for?
Well, these are all for a 08 R6, Yamaha R6. So we have some shims for adjusting the rear ride height of the shock. Instead of changing the length of the shock every time a rider wants to increase the swing arm angle or decrease the swing arm angle to tune the grip of his motorcycle, we use different shims. This allows us to have very accurate measurements in each change that we make. And it's not something we normally would sell to the public, but we're going to get that out there so guys can do that. And if they're using the same parts as us and the same suspension pieces, when we talk about issues they may have when we're supporting them technically, right? We'll know they're using the same parts as us. And when they say we've got a 7mm shim in there, we'll know what they mean, and that'll kind of tell us where the geometry of their bike is. So that's, and these are just examples of the types of parts that would be available. These are just some different shims for adjusting the seat height of a motorcycle. So everything could be the same on the bike, but the rider, from a riders like Ben Bostrom to a Josh Heron to a Jason DeSalvo would require the seat to be in a different location. And for the average guy to go out and make these parts, takes a lot of time to engineer and find a machinist and make them unless they actually have that equipment themselves. We'll just have it available for them. Maybe one of these little clamps that are used for holding a data pot, depending on the class of racing that they're doing, or even a track day enthusiast who would want to have dead acquisition hooked up to his bike and know where suspension travel is. For him to go and find someone to make this is difficult. So what we'll do is make extra and make it available to him. Steering stop, steering stop limiter. Here's another really neat piece. This pertains to the bodywork. A lot of riders have difficulty, taking the motorcycle apart and putting it back together in a quick fashion. Their technicians do, and you can see they pull the bolt out and their washer falls on the ground, and it's just cumbersome. And so we do a lot of things that make the bike easier to work on. And we want to help the general use racer with that. And this little piece here would just be a couple of machined parts that are clamped together, and they press over the bodywork. And so that, in a sense, has its own washer built into the bodywork now. And it makes simple for taking the bike apart and putting it back together.
Yeah, that's a huge one, especially with fiberglass.
Sure, sure. And I mean, there's other ones like special brackets. If you're using the same bodywork that we use and the same motorcycle, then all of these pieces fit, and you won't have to take the time to engineer these things or try to source them from somewhere. You'll be able to go to a website, you'll be able to look at the schematic of our race bike and pick and choose the pieces you'd like to buy. Here's another interesting one that I get a lot of questions for. If a guy's going to do an endurance race, or a 200, they need a stand that lifts the front wheel off the ground easily and gives the mechanic lots of room around the front wheel. So we use what's called a mid-lift stand. I'll show you that over here.
So let's go take a look at that real quick.
This mid-lift stand requires a special receiver that's attached to the engine. And for the average person to engineer this, it's difficult and time-consuming. And we'd like to make that available to those guys that would like to use it. We get a lot of requests for it, but when we only make one or two, it's difficult to supply them with their needs. So, as well as the stands. Talking about stands, I'll show you how we do a rear wheel change.
Yeah, let's go over there.
Parts we make for that.
Now this is a great stand and a piece as well for all of us that deal with the aggravation of a rear brake caliper.
So with a normal bike stand, the rider wants to get the wheel off the ground, but we've incorporated a couple of things that make the job easier for our mechanics. When they pull the wheel out, the caliper, and they remove the axle, the caliper has a tendency to, I'll just put this back in here, the caliper would normally have a tendency to want to just fall down. Now some riders would machine pieces to make this stay in place, but what we've done is just make a very simple plug that fits in here. So instead of just sliding the axle out, this plug, you can see it's machined, it fits the axle, just slides right in, and normally the wheel would be here. And when the mechanic pushes it in, pushes the axle out, holds the caliper in place, and we've also added a machine tube to hold the axle so the mechanic doesn't have to lay it in the dirt. These are some of a few of the items that will be available through that Works website. And I think we can really elevate the level of the privateer and the track day enthusiast and by bringing these things and making them available to him.
So when are you actually going to have that part of your website up and functional?
Well, it's up, it's built now, and there are some tweaks being made to how people could ask questions on that website. The one thing about the website is it won't be cumbersome for our Graves Motorsports company, which sells many of the general production race-developed parts, like our exhaust system or our engine covers or rear sets that are available to everybody, handlebars, etc., etc. These are just parts that are very special that we only make in small numbers. We'll make a larger production run, right? And they'll become available for the consumers as those parts, are finished, and then they can buy them. And if I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we'll make a production run, and when they're gone, they're gone. Right. But we'll make enough to handle most of the consumers that would want them.
So if someone is looking to order, what would you say in terms of timeline for them to be able to get some parts?
Okay. Well, we build most of the parts in the off season, so we'll start here after this race, and then we'll have most of that stuff done by the end of November, early December. So, but as the year goes on, we'll develop new parts and new pieces, and we'll always add to it.
Well, seems like at last some very exotic factory pieces, quality made and used and tested, will now become available.
Yeah, exactly, and it helps bridge that gap for those guys and their technicians, and it really it's the little things that make the difference when you're going racing. In narrowing up the time. If you watch a qualifying session in Supersport, the guys that can stay on the track the longest, right, get the most opportunity to cut the best lap. And little things like this make a big difference when you're changing a wheel.
Yeah, changing wheels, changing tires, all that stuff, if it's simpler and functionally easier to do, it's also a lot less stress on the rider and the crew as a whole.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your time. We wish you the best, obviously, with this new part of your website, and I think there's something that everybody's just going to love.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Go on and tell me the things you need. I need around to just watch me again.